I got 20 minutes, so we gotta go really fast. But yes, I work at AOL now, and it actually turns out that like we do cool stuff, and you're like, what, really? There are lots of Scala developers. There's lots of teams that are doing Scala, so check for jobs if you're interested. And I've been there since May. Very happy with that move. But anyway, this is the client-side apocalypse, and a little bit about me to get why I would talk about such a thing. I started Scala in 2012 after Martin Ordersky graciously offered a free course on his wonderful language. I helped build PartQuest.com at Mentor Graphics roughly in this time frame. And we used Lift on the back end, and developed LiftNG kind of in parallel, which is a nice little way you can put Angular on top of a Lift app. Became a Lift committer in 2015, so I help with the project nowadays. But now I'm working on the Go90 project app, streaming app at AOL. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is nothing to do with what I'm doing at AOL. It's what happened in my last job, and some of the things I learned there. So when you see apocalypse, actually, I put that like destruction of everything. That's actually not what I'm talking about. So this is what apocalypse is. It's just kind of like unveiling. Like it's here. It's just that in our culture, at least in Western culture, the unveiling we're most familiar with is the Book of Revelation and the end times and things. So they kind of got coupled together. But really, what it means is like, well, I'm just telling you some stuff. And so really, every talk is us telling you some stuff. And but depending on what you hear, it might be the end of client-side rendering for you. So, I mean, how many people are writing web apps at client-side render? A good handful. So, when I chose Angular here, the reason we chose Lift and Angular was because it was very good for designer-friendly development. Like, you could get template from a designer, put in Lift tags, put in Angular tags, bring it to life, and designer has no idea how to do JavaScript, right? So that was why we went that route. And but eventually, I'm kind of, I didn't really think about this, but this is what happens, right? So you got your web, browser open, you go into your address, you go off to the internet. I'm not going to talk DNS and stuff, right? But you end up at your server, right? And it goes, okay, great. Well, here's your template. Display none or something, right? There's a bunch of stuff that's not content, and the important crap is here at the bottom called JavaScript. And so you send it to them, and you've got nothing. There's still nothing to show, but we got to go back to the server and find the important crap, JavaScript. And then the server's like, oh, hey, you're here again. Here's your JavaScript. Then it comes back, and it's got some stuff in it. But there's still actual important crap you have to get later. So, because you come to the browser, and now you have JavaScript, but you have no actual important crap. So you go back to the internet and look for actual important crap. Your server's like, hey, welcome back. Here's your crap. And then you send it to them. And then, hey, yay, crap. Here's some crap, and it shows up on the browser. That's client-side rendering, and it is. This is not right. And keep them entertained with a spinner. Who are we going to pick on? Our very own Scala by the Bay. When you go to the schedule, they give you a spinner right here. It's like that'll trick them. I mean, really, like next year, just run a cron job that fetches the schedule like once a day and make it static. I mean, how often does it change? So. Anyway, but it's not a big deal, right? It's 2016. This is what the internet looks like. This is everywhere you live, right? Actually, no, this is false. Not everybody has Google Fiber or MacBook. Probably in real life, this is something you might see. And Blackberries, old phones, crappy, whatever that is, infrastructure. This was really eye-opening for me. On this project, we hired some folks down in Santiago, Chile, right? And one of my junior guys there, super sharp, loved him to death, was rocking an iPhone 3GS. And I'm like, his experience sucks probably on everything, and I want him as a user, And it was just kind of mind-opening to finally not be in a city in the U.S. with a MacBook, right? And kind of think about that. And it still happens. Look, this happened on my way over here. Did anybody use the Wi-Fi on the airplane over here? Okay. Do any of you use AWS? Go to the AWS console on a plane. It's hilarious. Like you'll Bitcoin yourself. It just doesn't work. It's complete garbage because it's doing so much stuff in the client. Things are failing, and it doesn't know how to tell you things are failing. And so it ends up being pretty rough. But even if it was really fast and reliable, this is what this is what your web apps look like. We got this. Stole this from a guy on Twitter. 2004, it was like, well, here's your HTML. That's a web app, and you're done. This stuff on the right is not probably anybody in this room is going to be familiar with, but this is kind of the common practice in the Node.js world, which is they're going to, they give you this full-blown client-side rendered app, but they do pre-render on the server because they're addressing some of the problems I'm talking about. I don't think, is anybody pre-rendering in this room? Yeah, see, we're not there yet. Node.js is a little bit ahead of us, and we shouldn't say words like that, but they are. But it's insanely complex. And then this line is the internet, and there's more arrows going across the line of this, the internet, and you should avoid doing that as much as possible because it's flaky, it's not reliable. You really don't want to pretend that it is. And but seriously, here loves JS anyway, right? Quit trolling, man. No, nobody does. As a matter of fact, we did this because we hate it so much. Thank you, Sebastian, right? I mean, seriously, this is a Scala conference. And the thing is, though, let's face it, now, it's bloated JS, right? I mean, we use the Clojure compiler and stuff to do the best we can, but there's going to be a lot more stuff you're shipping than if you wrote pure JS. I mean, it's just like when we started using C code to generate assembly, right? It's bigger. And it's not a compiled language still. It's still got to get parsed and just-in-time compiled and all that stuff in a browser. And you know, we're sending it everywhere, right? Just like, let's just send a shitty code everywhere. And then it's on these like inefficient, terrible devices, like just heating up the CPU, trying to turn on it. And then eventually you end up with this like global warming problem. And like, I know it feels great here in California, but I'm from Alabama and I'm dying. Let's stop it. Like quit rendering the client. No, that's a joke, obviously, but there's a lot of opportunities for failure when you develop an app in this style. You know, like if any of those round trips fail, your app is busted, right? Especially those first three. And who the sort of progressive enhancement? Like people talk about this, right? This is my definition of it because the real definitions are like better but I like this one. Basically, the HTML just works. That's how it works. And then if you happen to grab some JavaScript, it's going to work better. Or if you happen to grab some CSS, it's going to work better. But from the very get-go, it works. It might be crappier, but it works. And because there's some really fun facts. Like, did you know you can redirect the browser without doing on-click window.location equals somewhere else? Like, the browser does that natively. You can do this. It's OK. Here's another one that people have completely forgotten. HTML alone can send data to the server. Have you seen a form before? It's like it's like we completely forgot how HTML works and lost our minds and started writing Angular. You know, that's kind of where we're at today. So let's talk kind of, like, this is a functional programming crowd. Let's talk some kind of big picture stuff now too. You can define your application with these three different assets, right? You know, you can define it with HTML, you can define it with JavaScript, even CSS. Like, I saw somebody, and this has been a while, somebody wrote a timer in CSS. I'm like, what? Yeah, I mean, apparently it's a little bit more Turing complete than I realized. No, that's not true, but you can do some really good stuff with it. But in terms of power, which is the most powerful here and what's the least, right? Like HTML doesn't have loops in it, neither does CSS. That's why we use Sass and things like that. I mean, JavaScript is the language here, right? That's a Turing complete, has all the loops and side effects you want in it, whereas HTML is just data and CSS is, nobody understands it, but it's just data. So, right, JavaScript's the most powerful, right? So that's the one we should be using, right? So like, let's go to JavaScript. Let's get the most power possible, right? And that's exactly what we should do. And I say, no, God, no, please stop doing these things, right? So who has seen the best talk on Scala that has happened in my lifetime? Anybody seen this talk? Really, you should stop listening to me right now and pull this talk up. Because, and I had the pleasure of being there in person. I just remember when I was just like, so many things make sense now when he went through this talk. So 100% recommend this talk. Go home and watch it. And he's talking about the rule of least power. And you want to choose the least powerful language for that's suitable for a given purpose. Now, he gives lots of great examples. We'll talk about HTML in particular as another example of this principle. So, because otherwise, if you're doing the JavaScript, this is what happens, right? It's your client-side render apps only use it for a human with a powerful heat-producing device and a reliable network, right? Like nothing else can consume it, right? You can't scrape it or something, right? Like now I know like Google is adding JavaScript to their search engine, but now you're just making everybody have a really pain in the ass experience to get your content, and really you're back to here. Let's just face it. I mean, the JavaScript client rendered is applet and Flash all over again. The only difference is it doesn't have the security problems, you know, and because like you can't take a Flash app and go search it, you know. There's nothing you can do. It's just this blob that only a person with a browser in some device can take advantage of. And so you end up, search engines, blog readers. I don't know if you have a blog, but you ever see, you might get hits from Pocket.io's. Someone takes your blog and just plunk, throws it in there. You know, and maybe it has a JavaScript engine now to get around this too, but I'm just saying you're just making the web suck more. You know, that's my point. And also, if you're doing JavaScript, and even if you're doing Scala JS, whatever, you're throwing JavaScript over here. Now you got state on the client. This is something I'm really curious about. Who thinks that's a good idea? I mean, really, like you're putting state over there, and like now you got to like cross the internet and try to sync it up because, I mean, you got a distributed system now, and half of it's in JavaScript in some browser and some device that you have no control over at all, right? You just like, well, it conforms to the standard, I hope. And you know, let me just pull out a quote from someone smarter than us, because we all agree probably that, you know, distributed systems is hard. And if you're on 8th Light, you're probably, you know, at least respected. You might not know what you're talking about, but everybody listens to 8th Light, right? I'm appealing to authority here. Is that not like valid logic? Anybody do this? Anybody go update the view and then go tell the server in the background? Is that the way you do it? Honestly, is that what you do? You do that. I know you do it. We've all done that. You say, okay, thanks for the data, plunk. Look, we did it. Hey, server, they want that. Yo, server, again, I said, oh God, server's not talking. This is awkward. How do we tell the user this didn't happen? Oh shit, they refreshed the page, it's over. Because if it fails, that's what happens, right? Let's go through a nice, you know, little example user application here. Let's say we're not tech savvy. That's our thing. When we see something fail, this room, we get it, right? Like, client, server, refresh, try again. We're all comfortable with that. I love my mom, but she's not. Like, you show it to her, it's there. And now you took it away, and we're confused. And if you're using dial-up, a lot of people still are. I don't know if I mean, like, AOL still makes money off of this. Like, not everybody has high-speed internet available. I mean, you're laughing, but not everyone is in the city, you know? So it's still there, and oh my God, they're ordering a gun cleaning kit. I'm from Alabama, and I know firearms probably have a very different connotation here, but look, I have children in Alabama. I have, like, my mom has chickens and cows, and then there's these other animals like coyotes and bears that eat the children, chickens, and cows, and we need to shoot them. I mean, like, it's really simple. We're not shooting people for the most part, but I can't say. And you insist it goes in the cart, though, right? She clicks it, boom, it's in the cart, and something fails, and oh my God, now it's empty. Now, what's this user gonna think? You know, not tech savvy, buying gun stuff. She's thinking she's at Walmart, and bitch took it out of my buggy on Black Friday. She ain't happy. And they have firearms. So now you've made someone with a firearm very upset. Don't do this to your users. Now, maybe your application is fine. Let me back up a second. Like, the thing I built at Mincer Graphics, I'm still happy with. Client-side rendering was the right thing. But because there were tech-savvy users, had hardware requirements, and blah, 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 didn't have to worry about this. But a lot of us are doing this because we don't think there's any other way to build the web anymore. But instead of depending on Facebook to teach the world not to trust apps, because actually, the world is getting kind of good at going, you don't have to do this a bunch until it really happens, And I stole that from Tim Parrott, who might have stole it from someone else, but that Facebook is, training the world on failure in software. And when we just build trustworthy apps instead, like, we just don't show it to them unless it really happened, So this is, and you can do this and actually enjoy writing it, because, I mean, obviously if you're doing client-side rendering, you can just make a conscious decision, like, I'm gonna, sling it there, get the promise or whatever, and then when it's done, actually show it, maybe put a spinner. I mean, you can design your app that way. It's not impossible. But let's just take a review of these problems. You got multiple round trips, the app can fail. It can be slow to render even if it's not failing, because you just have a slow internet connection. You got state, you got to synchronize, and you can confuse the users and eroding user trust. And so Lyft actually avoids a lot of these problems. This is kind of where we talk about Lyft a little bit. And Lyft is old. Anybody here not heard of Lyft? So it's interesting that group is growing, because Lyft is like a 10-year-old, almost 10 years old Scala web framework that's still actively developed. Like way older than Play. I mean, Play's pretty old too, but it's a couple years older than Play, and it's still around. And for the most part, it's a complete project. So if you want to build something for the web that's not going to have a lot of weird bugs, I mean, nothing's bug-free, but we just don't have many left at this point. And but anyway, it renders fully functional HTML. You can do progressive enhancement. Some of the work I've been doing is to make it the happy path, like it's very easy to do the progressive enhancement. And if you have the JavaScript or CSS available. And state belongs on the server, not on the uncontrolled client. Now this is a big part of what made Lyft kind of fall out of favor. There's a lot of things we can talk about, and that's not what this talk is about, but a lot of people's like, well, now there's state on the server, that ain't cool. I'm like, well, there is state. Where do you want it? On the client or at home where you got it? And so a lot of people don't want to use Lyft because you have to use sticky sessions and things like that in order to load balance among multiple. And they think, oh, that must be terrible for scaling. Like, I scaled fine. But also by design, it's really easy to do the right thing as far as user trust and only update after you make the server round trip. Now, obviously, you could still have like some eventual consistency, right? I mean, I'm not saying this is only for MySQL or Postgres and it's committed, but I'm just saying like, because eventual consistency, if I'm not mistaken, does not mean it could fail. It just means it's not there yet. But when you have the internet, that can fail. That's not eventual consistency. So if you say, well, I updated the client and we just threw it over there as eventual consistency, it could fail. That's different. That's a very different idea. And so Lyft kind of makes it easy to do the right thing that way. But client updates are never fun in Lyft because the way it works in a nutshell is you got HTML. That's your templating language. HTML. We don't need a templating language. That's crap. And then you just put in the functions you want to call. Say, hey, Lyft, call this function, and then call that function, and call that function inside the DOM. And all it does, it'll take that little chunk of HTML, give it to you as a Scala XML node seek. You can do whatever, and we get a lot of nice little functions to help you do whatever really easily, and then you return what you really want. So everything's just pure functions. It's just data, pure functions sent to the client. It's wonderful. But the problem is, if something changed, you kind of had to handle it on your own. Like, we have really nice AJAX support, really good comment support. Yeah, that's right, old school. One of the features we're talking about doing is progressively enhancing to WebSocket when available. So it's just more performant, but it's just a performance enhancement, but it works. But you have to manipulate your DOM yourself. That's why my team built LiftNG, because it was like we had so much going on in the client. We're like, well, let's just use Angular, and because Lyft didn't have. Lyft is very agnostic about how you handle the front end changes is a way to look at that. So I was speaking with Brian Powell, who's the creator of Pacquiao, and I had this idea. Pacquiao is a Ruby framework that no one has heard of here probably, because it's just not likely because it's a small little Ruby framework. But I love talking to Brian because he always has completely different ideas on how stuff works. And so he's the one that gave me this user trust idea and so forth. And so I said, this is what I will do. Server-side VDOM, y'all, this will work. And we tried it. So if the DOM manipulation you're doing on the client is just to sort of reconcile state, that if you just refresh the page, it would be the same, then why does the end developer have to write JavaScript to go fix that? Why do it all magically? So we got it, give it a shot. So like React.js, you convert application state to DOM, right? And then anytime something changes, it doesn't matter where it changed, you just call this side effecting function that says, hey, boom, go update it, right? So we re-render the page, do a diff of that DOM XML tree against your other XML tree, push a little small JSON representation up to the client, and just update the DOM in place with JavaScript that you didn't have to write, and it's not a very big library. And the whole progressive enhancement, some of that stuff just works. Like you can write a post such that if the JavaScript doesn't show up, it's still a post. And if it does show up, it'll go, oh no, it'll wipe that off and say do AJAX so you don't have to reload. So you get progressive enhancement very easily. And it just, because Lyft really wants to make Happy Path wonderful. And it's not ready yet. Brittany is actually the one who put the CFP in for this talk, but she wasn't able to make it, so I kind of filled it in for her. But we're going to try to get it in for 3.1 if anybody cares. If no one thinks this is a good idea, we'll quit. But we have so far, we're using HTML, so we actually tested JavaScript, generative property tests. We just don't handle multiple mutations reliably because we just kind of just get some stuff working and see if it worked in principle. But now we actually need to get further. So I'm talking about it now because I'd like if you to contribute. You can contribute to Lyft or whatever you want to do. Here are ways to help. Just holler at me on Twitter, discuss the idea. These are all links, so when you get to slides, you can get the links. Play with the code, look at the sample app. But the main thing is, the biggest thing I'd like to know at this point is this something interesting to the crowd? As I promised, here are all the credits. We have like 15 seconds for questions. Good. No, seriously, quick question. I have not tested performance differently yet. I have no idea. Yeah, I was sorry. He asked how does performance compare if you're diffing on the server versus diffing on the client. I would think, I mean, because it depends on the client, right? So the main thing is you got to decide, do you like this whole round trip idea? That's the really big thing you got to think about. Do you like that? But before we use this, but yeah, our time's up. Just catch me off. We'll talk about it. I mean, I'll stand around. We'll talk this stuff all you want to. Sound good? All right, thanks.